It's finally here. After 4 long years of waiting for the promised Captain America sequel, Marvel Studios has finally released Captain America Brave New World. Was it worth the wait? Find out right now on Spoiler Alert. Welcome to Spoiler Alert. I'm your host, Sheldon, here with Evan as always, here to talk some spoilers. And today we have a treat for you as we are going to talk about Marvel Studios' latest release, Captain America Brave New World. And boy, do we have a lot to talk about, don't we, Evan?
Wow, don't we? Oh my goodness. I've been so excited for this for so long.
So excited for good reasons or for bad?
So excited.
For reasons.
For reasons.
For reasons.
That we'll get into.
That we will get into. Well, before we actually tell everybody and give them the reasons why they should or shouldn't see this particular Marvel release, let's give a little background on this movie, kind of the things that led up to it and kind of where the production was at. Because this movie, was first announced during the release of the 6th episode for The Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
What was that,
right,
21?
So March of 21 is when it was originally announced.
4 years ago.
4 years ago. So it's been 4 long years that fans have, I don't know if I would say eagerly waited, but definitely waited in some capacity for this movie. Mm-hmm. And filming itself didn't actually start until 2 years later in March of 23. Now, if you know how to math, that was 2 years ago. And generally, Marvel movies aren't, from the time they start filming to their release date, usually it's not quite 2 years. Mm-hmm. And this movie saw a lot of delays, right? This movie was originally supposed to be released, I believe it was May or July of last year. And it may have even had an earlier release date in 23. I don't remember. But point is, this movie's had some production problems, right? I mean, almost from the time that it wrapped shooting, we've had reports of very poor test screenings and then a lot of reshoots that have kind of plagued this movie.
And especially reshoots that were so close to the release date back in November.
Right.
Which is, that was 4 months ago? 5 months ago?
That usually signals that something's bad, unless it's very small, just pickup shots, which a lot of movies do. Mm-hmm. But if it's, full month-long reshoots, then you've got problems.
There was something wrong.
And actually, the main villain of this movie, his name is Samuel Stearns, right, from Incredible Hulk. He is played by Tim Blake Nelson, and he was in an interview, I think it was back in November.
I think it was after they were doing the reshoots. He confirmed the reshoots.
He confirmed the reshoots, and he went in and said that they essentially had shot this movie twice, right? They had enough...
Which I feel like is an indication that
movies,
maybe this wasn't a good idea.
Yeah, because, we were getting reports of very poor test screenings a long time ago, and usually when they get that, that's when the reshoots start. And every movie will have reshoots. It's a normal thing, but...
To this extent was really bad.
It was a red flag.
Shoot the movie and then basically reshoot the entire movie again, basically last minute, at the 13th, 12th hour.
The entire thing was just a big red flag. So Captain America Brave New World is directed by Julius Ona. I haven't seen anything.
I don't know what he's done.
Yeah, I don't know what he's done, so I don't know if he's really that talented. If I'm judging you just based on this movie,
it doesn't help his career.
But the funny thing is, when you go and you watch this movie and you watch the credits roll, there are 5 credited screenwriters on this movie. Usually, not always, but usually that is a bad signal because that usually means that during reshoots, they had to they weren't just reshooting and kind of to get alternate versions.
But they had to go through and change and rewrite
they actually
scripts.
went through and changed massively because there's certain rules in play in Hollywood in order to get a screenwriting credit is you have to have written a certain percentage of the movie. I want to say it's 50%, but don't quote me on that. So if there's 5 screenwriters that are credited, that means that
there was technically 2.5 movies. If you're looking at if it was a 50%.
And again, I'm not sure what the percentage is, but there's certain rules that apply that in order to get a screenwriting credit, you have to have written a certain percent of the movie. And in the way that not all reshoots, but a lot of reshoots work, I guess I would say reshoots that studios are not confident in is that they will have to bring in other writers in order to rewrite whatever it is that they had before.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we got here, which is why we have 5 credited screenwriters, which isn't all that common, right?
Yeah.
Now, just to give a brief plot summary here, we're not going to give everything. We'll talk about the spoilers when we actually start to dig into what worked for us and what didn't. But this movie takes place a few years after The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and it's right on the brink of Thaddeus Ross, who in this movie is played by Harrison Ford, not William Hurt, because William Hurt passed away. And
Some
Thaddeus
people
Ross
don't realize that we've seen Thaddeus Ross before.
Right, which I think we can get into that, but that's it's a hard thing to deal with recastings because it really takes you out of it. You know, especially when we've already seen Thaddeus Ross in 5 movies, I think. So he had The Incredible Hulk, Civil War, Infinity War, Black Widow.
And he made some small appearances in some other ones.
So he's already been in several movies, and so it's hard to kind of wrap your mind around that. But the movie starts off with him being elected president, and he is wanting to restart the Avengers Initiative with Sam Wilson as the new Captain America, and he's in the midst of trying to form a treaty with Japan to secure some adamantium from the Celestial that appears in the Eternals. If you haven't seen the Eternals, then you wouldn't really know what's going on there.
You probably just need to watch at least 10 minutes of it.
But the end of the movie, there's a celestial being that's in the middle of the Indian Ocean. Anyways, there's a treaty in this movie that they're trying to resolve between Japan and the U.S. to secure some adamantium, which comic book fans and movie fans will know is what Wolverine has his claws
it's the toughest metal on Earth.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the backstory there, and then the plot really starts to kick off when there's an assassination attempt on President Ross in the White House, and then Sam Wilson has to kind of take the lead to figure out what's going on, who the villain is behind it, and what the whole story is going on there.
Yeah.
So
that's the best rough breakdown we can.
That's our rough draft. You can always go to Wikipedia if you want to read the full plot. That's usually what I do afterwards, just because it's fun.
Yeah.
But let's talk about what we liked, what we didn't like. But we always start with the good stuff because in a movie like this,
we have more bad than good.
Yeah, there's not that much good. So Evan,
surprise.
Let's talk about your pros of this movie. Let's talk about what you liked and what we.
I think we talked about it a little bit when we got out of the theater, that I was pretty pleased with Anthony Mackie's performance. We talked about it a little bit. Same with Harrison Ford, right? Harrison Ford and Anthony Mackie, both maybe not fantastic, but they're both pretty good actors. They usually do a pretty good job. They had good chemistry. They're usually pretty decent. Granted, the resources and the tools that they were given were kind of just crap, to say the least.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So honestly, the fact that Anthony Mackie did what he could, and I mean, he did a decent job at portraying who Captain America is, even though a lot of people, they kind of forget that, yes, we've grown up seeing Steve Rogers or Chris Evans, Captain America. But this movie is based off of somebody who knows that he can't fill those shoes, but he's still doing what
I think that
can.
was a good way to approach it, is that you could see that Sam was actually struggling to fill the role of Captain America because he's stepping in to try to fill these huge shoes that Steve Rogers left. So anybody that will give crap about this movie,
that's not a reason why.
Yeah, they're not going to give crap for Anthony Mackie because he did a good job.
He did.
And he played his role well. And it was a very natural flow from his character arc, starting with
turning into the Falcon to kind of taking on the shield to then passing it away to now becoming Captain America. For
sure. I mean, so Anthony Mackie was a bright spot in the movie.
And I would say an echo on that was Harrison Ford.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
He was, I think that he was just born to play president, man.
He was.
He really was.
There's something about Harrison Ford saying just certain lines that are like, wow, that's so...
Some of these speeches.
Yeah, and it's like when he's like, you're not Steve Rogers. It's like...
Yeah, you could feel that. You're
that's a Harrison Ford line, and he delivers it well. And... Now, that said, like I mentioned earlier, it's hard to... Part of me, because I liked Harrison Ford in this movie, but part of me feels like I'm watching Harrison Ford. I'm not watching Thaddeus Ross.
Yeah, that's
I think
a big...
is a big... It's a fruit of the fact that they recasted him, so it's hard for me to see, oh, this is William Hurt from Civil War. No, this is just kind of Harrison Ford playing the president.
Yeah.
And so... In that regard, it didn't feel very connected. It didn't feel like there was a pre-established relationship between Sam Wilson and Thaddeus Ross, just because, I mean, you're seeing a completely different version of Thaddeus Ross.
Yeah. Which is hard, and you kind of have to give a little bit of credit to where credit's due, right? Harrison Ford's coming into, not that he's not a bad actor, but he's coming into a role that's been played that people already technically knew.
Right.
So he still had to do the best with what he had, and I'll give him that. Like, he didn't do a bad job, but it's kind of hard because he's still not going to fill that
you
part.
You lose your immersion in a story when you recast.
It's just how it is.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
Another bright spot of this movie, which I don't know that it's 100% a bright spot of this movie as much as it's getting me excited for the next Marvel movie, and that was Bucky's cameo.
Yes.
Okay, so Bucky shows up
for
5 minutes in this movie, maybe 3 minutes, and he just has a conversation with Sam Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
And
I was so happy to see that.
They're clearly setting up his role in Thunderbolts because he's wearing the same outfit that he is in the trailer when he's at the congressional hearing or whatever.
Whatever it
turns out to be.
Yeah.
Now that said, they implied in this movie, or they stated that Bucky was going to a campaign, or he was going to like a campaign.
He was going to go be a state congressman.
Yeah, he's running for Congress, and I don't really feel, based on where he was in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, that's a natural fit for his character.
I 100% agree.
Because it's like...
But also, to me, it shows, number one, it's setting up the next movie, right? That's why we were excited.
Right, that's the reason why I like the cameo, is because I think the Thunderbolts looks really good.
It's going to be great.
I think it looks a lot... And there's a reason why Brave New World was released in February, not May, and why Marvel saved their May release for Thunderbolts, because Thunderbolts looks like a much better movie.
It's going to be very well done.
So that's why I liked that Bucky cameo.
Yeah, and it's also cool because...
I'm excited for that.
Well, we talked about it right when we walked out of the theater, but seeing him wearing the exact same outfit, that implies and tells us, great, that means that he's literally going into... Like, the movie of Thunderbolts is following very, very, very shortly after Brave New World,
that's
which I
enjoy.
Thing
that I think that Phase 4 and 5 of Marvel have desperately missed is
this continuous,
connecting thread that makes you feel like, okay, I have to see this movie to understand this next movie.
Yeah. Well, let's look back at 1, 2, and 3 leading up to Infinity War.
Right.
All of these movies, every now and then they throw like Ant-Man in there or Black Panther that like kind of went with the story, but they still just gave a little bit of background.
I mean, if you think about it, right? Captain Marvel was released right after Infinity War. Mm-hmm. Captain Marvel was not a good movie. Like, let's just be real. It just wasn't a good movie. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't good.
Yeah.
And the reason why it made $1 billion at the box office is because of that connecting thread that Marvel had established over 3 phases. And so people felt like they had to go see that movie because it was a part of the bigger picture.
Which it technically
was. To Endgame. Yeah, which it did play a role.
Yeah.
And so I like that Marvel's trying to get back to that. If that's
I hope
that
they do. I think that would
because
be
that was
idea.
I think more than anything, that's what
original Marvel to me.
That's what enabled the first 3 phases of Marvel to work so well, is because people felt like they were part of this big event.
Yep.
And they couldn't miss that big event. Which
when the Avengers movie would come out and they said that Age of Ultron would come out in 2 years, everything leading up to that, people were like, we have to go see it because it's connected.
And
to
that's the reason
why
why Avengers Endgame is the highest grossing movie of all time. I know technically Avatar is, but the movie's been released like 50 times, so I don't count it. Avengers Endgame is the highest grossing movie of all time for all intents and purposes. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is because Marvel did so well in building up this big universe, big connected universe, that people felt like they couldn't miss.
Yeah.
And so hopefully this is a sign that they're getting back to that. And when they released Avengers Doomsday, granted, they don't really have much time before Avengers Doomsday to really build that excitement, but
because they're scheduled to release, I think that it's May of 27 is their scheduled release.
Well, Doomsday is May of next year, and then
it's of 26.
Secret Wars is May of 27.
Sorry, that's what I'm thinking of. Secret Wars. Oh,
so
God.
They don't really have the time to build up.
Well, I mean, if we look at the calendar, we just got Brave New World. We get Fantastic Four. Thunderbolts. We get the Blade movie.
I don't even know if the Blade movie is going to happen. They've been pushing off that release date so much.
For so long.
So,
but we might get 1 more, maybe 2 more.
I think the only reason why that movie will succeed, if it does, is because of the hype of the previous Avengers movies.
Yeah.
That said,
for Doomsday,
we digress. Captain America. Let's talk about
that. Yeah, we'll get back. We're getting off track.
Do you have anything else that you like? Any other reasons why you'd be like, okay, yeah, go see this movie for X reason?
It's not really a reason for seeing Captain America. But we always tell everybody to go see the movie in the theaters. It really is a different experience. I guarantee you, if I saw this at home, I would have just closed my phone or just gone and done anything else. But seeing a movie in the theater was really enjoyable. Granted, we had some idiot that sat in front of us deciding to shop on Amazon.
If you are going to a theater, okay, I'm going to say this to anybody watching right now.
Bro,
if you were going to go to a theater,
bad.
turn off your phone. It's so disrespectful
really
to everybody else in the theater who paid money and time to be there. So don't get on your phone.
It's not that hard to put your phone away for like 2.5 hours.
It is not hard. It's because we live in a world where people have.
This was also a short movie. Like what?
It really was. It wasn't even 2 hours.
We didn't go see Oppenheimer. We were at the theater for like 4 hours.
If you have to get on your phone, get up off your fat butt, go out of the theater, and do your phone things there. But it's very disrespectful to everybody else in the theater if you're on your phone or if you talk.
100%.
That said,
seeing it in the theaters is truly a different experience. It doesn't matter what movie it is, even if it was The Dial of Destiny, I hate to say it, or Interstellar.
You're going down there.
Seeing the movie in the theater is really it's just different. Maybe because I love popcorn and soda and like it's really fun to go there. But seeing a movie, especially a new movie, the story hasn't been released. It's your first time seeing it in the theater. It's so
Stay tuned
amazing.
because we're going to do an episode on that. The reasons why you should go to the theater instead of stream.
100%.
That said, let's talk about the things that didn't work for this movie.
I was going to say, can we get into
I guess
the cons?
reasons why you shouldn't go see this
Woohoo!
movie. But
I'm so excited.
We got a lot of them. Hit me up. Let's get started.
I want to start in chronological order. And first off, they screwed us over, and I was really sad because right when we sat down, I told Sheldon, I said, they have a great opportunity to give us the original Marvel Comics opening, right? And I would literally cry.
With the theme song.
And instead it was like...
They had a chance to hit all those nostalgia berries, but they just didn't.
They did not.
They didn't take that opportunity.
So that was a huge L. But going into the story, right off the bat, we see Thaddeus Ross doing some weird speech. Just the lights, the camera, the angle, just everything right off the bat felt so choppy.
It all screamed reshoots.
It was
what it
so
did.
Bad, and I was like, "This is how we're starting the movie. Like you could have chosen something better."
It felt amateurish, like compared to watching.
It was like me and junior high doing film school,
and compared to watching the other Captain America movies, it felt so amateurish. It just didn't feel. And I don't even know what it really was. I don't know if it was a combination of the cinematography, of the lighting, of the set.
It was honestly probably a little bit of both.
But it all just felt cheap. Mm-hmm. And
it reflects a lot
right
through
off
the movie,
the bat,
which we'll get into.
I don't like this. But
that's the first one, right? Chronologically, I'm going in order because that's the first one. The second one that I would say would be I didn't really like. Now that I've thought about it a little bit after we saw the movie recently, the actor that played Joaquin Torres, I think is his name. Is that the actor's name? I think it's
the character. Joaquin. The character name is Joaquin.
I forget what the actor's name is.
I think is
the guy that plays the new
Danny Ramirez.
Thank you. I didn't really like him. The reason why is because from the very get-go, he tried to just put really snappy, like stupid, just jokes into the movie.
Yeah, I felt like
they weren't fitting.
I feel like it didn't. His humor didn't land. I don't think he's a bad actor. I don't think his character's bad, but it just felt so out of place and didn't feel natural.
Yeah.
So
he tried to be this like cool, funny sidekick almost to Captain America, where it just, I don't know. A lot of Marvel movies, they have a really good sense of humor. They just do. A lot of them.
But even then, this movie itself, it didn't really have that. They had a few jokes, but they didn't land.
Yeah,
but
they were awful.
It was a lot more. It tried to take itself a lot more serious, which I'm not going to fault it for that.
They wanted to be Winter Soldier. They really tried, but
they did. And we'll bring that up more. My first con I'm going to say is the obvious. The CGI was horrible. Like, what do you expect?
Bad.
What do you expect from Marvel movies at this point? It's like that is. I mean,
I feel like that's just a given at this point, right?
And it took a downturn, I think, around Civil War. Because up to that, the CGI wasn't bad. I mean, it's not like
they just started to bank off of CGI.
Yeah, but if you go, and I talked about this when we reviewed Civil War, is the CGI in Civil War is the reason why I gave that movie a 7.5 stars instead of anything higher. Because of two reasons: the CGI in the airport scene, and then the airport scene itself. Yeah. But the CGI isn't improved in this movie, and I think a big part of that may just be because of how many reshoots they did, which meant a lot of very underpaid, overworked CG artists.
Yep.
So I don't fault the people working on it, but it's a common problem in Marvel that I don't see as getting fixed anytime soon.
No, I hate to say it, but they really banked off of it, especially with one thing that I did hate is they banked off of the CGI with when they introduced like the vibranium suits with Black Panther. In this movie, we see a lot with like the Falcon wings. It's just there's no. I mean, like, sure, an Iron Man suit up was still CGI, but it was a different type of CGI than this. Just
well, I think the earlier Iron Man suit ups were so much better, like the Iron Man 1, Iron Man 2 suit ups, because they were using a lot more practical effects. They looked a lot better.
Mm-hmm. I did really like Infinity Wars, right? Because it's just like, I mean, it's just technology and they're just advancing. So, like, I get it, but I wasn't a huge fan that they really are now banking off of this cheap aspect of the vibranium. Basically, just like at the blink of an eye, there's wings, or the blink of an eye, there's. I
didn't
helmet.
like that either. I thought it was.
Yeah, I thought
it's just a cop out.
I was gonna say it's just a cop out at that point. It's just cheap. They're just like, we could just get lazy with it. I don't know.
Now,
so that's another one that I wasn't a huge fan of.
Overall, the plot as a whole felt so stitched together. So that's another con that I'm going to give it, is that it felt like it was reshot, because it felt like there were several different storylines going on together. Because we had kind of the whole story arc of Sidewinder, right, played by Giancarlo Esposito, right there.
Which we'll get into in just a second.
Right there in the front of the poster, who they build as kind of a bigger villain.
Which is crazy to think.
But right there you had kind of his character as almost like its own side quest, right?
Yeah.
With him stealing the adamantium. And then you bring in the whole different storyline of Samuel Stearns, the leader, taking out his revenge against Thaddeus Ross, which is another thing that I will talk about in a little bit later, is that this wasn't a Captain America movie. Like, it's not that Sam Wilson wasn't Captain America, but this movie was not focused around Captain America. It was
focused around Thaddeus
Ross. A sequel to The Incredible Hulk more than anything.
Yeah.
And just the fact that it felt like they were trying to stitch together two plots, which I think is what actually had happened, is they had shot one movie, realized it didn't work with their test audiences, and reshot another movie, then had to stitch them together, which is why I think it feels so different with having one kind of villain as Sidewinder and another villain as the leader. Mm-hmm. And so that...
Yeah, that's fair.
That is a big con, but that leads into another con, which is the pacing of this movie. Mm-hmm. This movie is paced like an abomination.
Yeah.
Right? Because now there's different kinds of pacings for movies, right? You have Dune. Dune is one of the most, like, I get people love it. I get it's visually incredible.
It is very, very, very
slow. It is one of the most horribly paced movies I have ever seen, because everything feels like, oh, this happens, and now this happens, and now this happens. Nothing feels like a connective thread, like things happen because, right? It feels like and then instead of because. Mm-hmm. And this movie's the opposite, but kind of not. Because this movie also feels like, and then this happens, and then this happens, but it's a lot quicker and a lot smaller.
Yeah, there's not really a setup. I mean, we'll get to it in a second.
There's no
it's
setup
one of my
in this
things
movie.
that I want to talk about.
And there's no, like, extended sequence in this movie where you feel like...
jump
so
quickly.
It's bad. It's really bad. Because you go and you look at really any other movie, is you have... Movies are built on, major sequences. Action movies especially are built on major sequences, that have little scenes in them. And this movie doesn't do that, because there's no extended sequences that you're like, wow, that was really cool. I mean, like a big example, and I will use this example a lot. But
yes,
you look
Fallout?
No, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning.
Oh.
Okay, so Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning is 2 hours and 43 minutes.
I think, yeah.
So it's a long movie, but it doesn't feel that. Why? Because by the time you get to the opening credits of Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, all you have are essentially 4 scenes left in the movie, right? You have 4 major sequences that are stitched together, right? You have the airport sequence, you have the Rome sequence, the Venice sequence, and then the train sequence. Mm-hmm. And that's the movie. It's really just 4 big sequences. And so because of that, it makes the movie feel a lot shorter than it actually is. And this movie had the opposite effect. It
had 70 different scenes.
Yeah,
but
there was nothing that really
seconds.
Right, there was nothing that really stitched it together, and that was a big problem for me. Mm-hmm. So
I'll dive into. There's a specific reason that I want to, but I'm going in.
Hit me up. Okay, what's your next chronological order con?
The damn limo ride. And I know I looked over at you and we both went, ugh. But it's
It was
Captain
so out of
America, the
place.
Falcon, and Isaiah. And they're going on their way to the White House because Thaddeus Ross invited Captain America, and Captain America brought, of course, Isaiah because he's kind of like a hidden Captain America almost because he's still a super soldier, but they don't really. It's this weird like whatever.
We don't have to talk about that. Go watch a review on Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and you'll know what we figured out.
But while they're in the limo, it's like, I hate to say it was me when I was 17. They're in the back of a limo. They're like, look, we've got fancy wine. Woo! They're blasting rap music. They're yelling. They're having fun.
I've never seen what's that one movie with Will Smith?
Bad Boys.
And I've never seen Bad Boys. I imagine that's how Bad Boys is. just based on the trailers I've seen and the marketing
felt like
for it.
Miami. 100%.
Yeah, it's Miami. It's L.A. It's like, this isn't Captain America. Get this crap out of here.
That's why at first I kind of thought, I was like, okay, they're gonna kind of be a little silly, but in my instance, I stepped back and I was like, okay, Captain America is supposed to be that symbol, right? He's not going to encourage and he's not going to drink and he's not going to celebrate like that. He's just going to be like, hey, whatever, and he'll just smile and just wave.
Right, they're going to the White House.
I was like,
it's like this is you would think this is kind of a big.
Also, it was a scene that they didn't need to put.
It didn't need to be in the movie, and it dragged on for way too long.
Yeah, it was like a whole 3 minutes of them chilling there. I'm
like,
why?
That scene took like about half the runtime of the final battle scene. Or the final battle between Captain America and Hulk.
And I was just like, what was the purpose of this? They could have literally just cut and been like, hey, well, we've got to get to the White House. And then it shows them on the red carpet. They're getting their picture. And it would have been the exact same scenario.
Exactly. And again, that's just, it shows the fact that how much they stitched together this movie. It really was a Frankenstein's monster of a movie because they just stitched together all these different pieces.
They put so much
of different movies that were shot. Mm-hmm. And you can tell that this movie wants to be, at times you can tell this movie wants to be Captain America the Winter Soldier.
But then it was also like, oh, is this an Incredible Hulk sequel? Right. Or is this an origin story of how Thaddeus Ross is now coming into the presidential box?
Right. It was just different movies, and it didn't work. It just didn't work for me. Now, another con that I'll give it.
Another con? I've got so many.
There are so many.
But
the villain, right? Samuel Stearns as the leader. He did not do a good job, number one. He wasn't established enough.
No.
And especially because, okay, if you're relying on me as an audience, having seen The Incredible Hulk that is now 17 years old, and not only that, but Samuel Stearns was a side character in The Incredible Hulk. If you're relying on me knowing his backstory, everything about him, from the 17-year-old movie that isn't even connected to the same franchise in the sense that it's not a Captain America movie, that's your first flaw. You can't bring that person back as your main villain and expect us to know exactly who he is. And sure, they gave us a little bit of background, but it wasn't enough for us to care because he wasn't established enough throughout the movie.
I thought it would have been cool that if they did, they would have... like a great example was from No Way Home, where they went through and they showed, like when Jake Gyllenhaal's character Mysterio was going through shouting out like the people that was helping him, they did like flashbacks of seeing where these people were in the storyline. Mm-hmm. That would have been really cool because then they could have like CGI'd him into like different scenes throughout the Marvel timeline.
Even
because then we could have... I felt like I would have related to that more to be like, oh, he's just been working in the dark or whatever. But even then, he wasn't established.
I liked the idea of his powers, right? They come from the comics. He's just incredibly smart. And I like the idea of him figuring out how to mind control people because he's that smart. But it just, again, it goes back to the problem that this isn't a Captain America movie because the villain is directly connected to Thaddeus Ross. And that's what the movie's about. It's not about Samuel Stearns taking revenge out on Captain America. It's not about Samuel Stearns having this world-ending plot that Captain America has to deal with. It's Samuel Stearns wants revenge against Thaddeus Ross, and Captain America just happens to be there.
It would have ended the same way if Captain America wasn't
if Captain America wasn't in this movie, it would be the same movie.
Yeah.
It would just have a different title. It would be Red Hulk, Brave New World instead of Captain America, Brave New World.
Yeah.
So I didn't like that at all. And because, I mean, if you're going to make a Captain America sequel, make a Captain America sequel.
Make it around his timeline.
Give me another.
I hated the way that he looked. He looked like a piece of
frog.
fungus.
He looked like a frog, right?
Dude, he looked like the bottom of a mushroom. Like,
I haven't heard it that way, but yes. No, I agree.
I saw
I
this
think
and
that,
I was like, what? It looked like a clicker from The Last of Us.
yeah.
All
The
fungus
design
going
was
off of his
cheap.
head.
The design was cheap. I didn't
Even
like
if
it
they
at
went
all.
for like a more comic book accuracy where his head was taller, I at least would have been like, all right, that's kind of funny.
Would you want, like, so you've seen Green Lantern?
Yeah, that's
You kind
exactly
of
what
like
I'm
that.
thinking of.
A massive head. This guy's just like, I get headaches like that sometimes, where you feel like your head's like the size
Yeah.
of
I feel like that would have been
cantaloupe.
better because then it's a little bit more comic book accurate. But then I personally think
Well, I'm
that
gonna
I could
have to-
see the jokes of Captain America just like
I'd have to push back on that because if you're trying to implement stuff from Green Lantern, that's not a good strategy.
well,
that's
Green
not a,
Lantern sucks.
That's not a strategy for success.
Love Ryan Reynolds, but that was a bad movie.
That was a terrible movie.
100%. But you know what I'm talking about. If they would have been a little bit more accurate instead of just like I get it. We talked about it as well hundreds of times, but things that appear in the movies that are in the comics, they usually look a little different. There's a variation, and I get
Yeah.
that. It's just how it is. But they just did a bad job with it, and I wasn't too...
All I got from that is that we should do things more like Green Lantern. Fun fact, that was actually only the second movie I ever saw in theaters.
What?
What? Back in 2011.
I think the second movie I saw in theaters was Star Wars The Clone Wars, the movie.
Wow. The first was Star Wars Episode 3. That was the very first movie I saw. Fell asleep. I
We
can
get
tell
to
you
see
a
that
story
later
later.
this year. But back to the cons. I
All
would
right.
say that was pretty bad.
Another con that I have, another thing that was just not good for this movie is the chick. Okay, there's this girl. I don't know what her actress name is. Her name in the movie is Ruth. She's some Israeli chick who's supposed to be previously a member of the Widow program. So comes from where the same place
So
where
dumb.
Black Widow does. And
I mean, you can see her there.
yeah, she was on the poster, right?
I don't know how. She just knows somebody.
The problem with her is that you cannot tell me that this
She's
chick,
like 4'11".
This chick is straight up not taller than 5 feet. There's no way she's
No.
taller than 5 feet. She's 4'11", like 85 pounds. You can't convince me that this 4'11", 85-pound chick, who kind of looks like she should be playing one of the Seven Dwarfs in the new Snow White movie. Am I wrong? Just throw a beard on her and she would be playing one of the Seven Dwarfs.
That's crazy. I mean,
And-
he's not wrong. But
I'm not wrong.
maybe she'll be in the Seven Dwarfs. Should we go
No,
review
because,
that?
because remember they
I think we
are
need to go review it
CGIing
now.
everybody.
Oh shit, I forgot.
Because Peter Dinklage was like, no, short people play in short roles not good. And then they're like, okay, CGI this crap.
Yeah.
But that was after it was the 7 diverse people.
Oh yeah,
Right?
yeah.
It started off as that, then they CGI'd everybody, and then
That's
talk about a
another
mess.
whole mess.
Talk about something that's going to be a mess.
Yeah.
But the point is, so they're trying to convince me that this little 4'11", 85-pound chick can beat up these 6'5", 260 burly military guys just because she was a member of the Widow program. Okay, look, I don't care. If you're the size of a 12-year-old teenage girl or a 13-year-old teenage girl,
Yeah,
you
she's a
can't
football.
you can't beat up some freaking like Ray Lewis linebacker-sized dude. Like, give me a break. Like, that's not a
Ray
thing.
Lewis.
That's not a thing. And
But
so
it's true though. Like there's no.
it completely takes you out of the story. Completely.
I remember when they're escaping out of the stupid secret base, which was the whole problem. Ugh. And they turn the corner, and she's like, "What are you doing here?" And they're like, "What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here."
It was like the Spider-Man.
And then
meme.
she like starts attacking something, and then one of them just like, I could just hear the sadness in his voice. Oh yeah, she's part of the Widow program, and I could just like hear it in his voice to be like, this is cringe.
that brings us to our next con, because we could talk about her bad character for a while, because she really was, and she was just kind of there to move the plot along. She didn't really have a purpose. But that brings me to the next point. Okay, look, I will say Marvel movies have never been known for their Shakespearean dialogue, right? They've never had this incredible dialogue that like is going to win Oscars.
Nope.
But this
Never.
movie takes the Marvel dialogue that wasn't good already and brings
They
it down.
brought it so far.
Brings it down a whole nother level. Now there are 2 instances that I wrote down in my notes here.
I think I know what you're talking about.
The first one is
I think I know.
so there's something that happens, right? There's some fallout between President Ross and the Japanese about their treaty, and there's a couple other countries involved, and one of them is Paris. So he's on this meeting.
Yeah, it was
with-
India and Paris.
So he's on this meeting with some representative from Paris, and they're talking about how they can't get involved in the treaty because Japan backed out. And the dialogue is exactly like this. He's like, we cannot get in the treaty because Japan is no longer here too.
So
But
go get
if-
Japan on
but-
board,
yeah,
and we will
exactly.
join. And I was like, It was like it was popping up on their computer.
They were just reading a teleprompter.
Please join. Please join. I was
and
like,
the other instance that I'm thinking is when so Joaquin and Sam are going to this secret base, which is where the villain is being held.
Camp Echo 1.
Camp Echo 1. So they're going to this base. They're just driving in a truck. I guess step backwards. So, right, so Isaiah Bradley is framed for the assassination of Thaddeus Ross, right? Sam believes he's mind controlled or whatever, but he's thrown into prison, and there's a couple other people who were also part of this attempted assassination that are thrown into prison as well. About halfway through the movie, someone is mind controlled and goes and shoots up the prison, but Isaiah's still alive, right? But these other assassins are killed. And so Sam and Joaquin are driving to this secret base after this shoot up happens. And Joaquin gets this text, and this is exactly how the conversation goes. He's like,
I'll be Sam. You be him.
Okay, so he's sitting there, he gets a text, he's like, oh no, Sam, I just got a text on my phone. Here, it says that the prison that Isaiah was in just got shot up.
Is he okay?
Yes, he is not dead. Should we turn back?
No, we must keep going.
Okay.
And then they're at Camp Echo 1. Literally the moment he was done with his
dialogue was so bad. It was written by a 7-year-old. It was terrible.
I doodled on a piece of paper.
And not only that, but what purpose does that whole exchange serve in the context of the story? It doesn't do anything for our characters. It doesn't motivate them to take any action. All it does is tell the audience that, okay, now they know Isaiah is still alive and that they got shot up, but it doesn't serve any purpose.
Yeah.
It does nothing to further the story, and it does nothing to further anybody's character.
It was so dumb. Speaking of the Camp Echo 1, I just remembered one of my other cons. They get there, they see Stern. Stern does something dumb, and he tries to lower his voice and talk to them about being all scary. And they're like, okay, you're green. Get out of my face. They finally get out of the Camp Echo 1, and the one Ruth chick, the Falcon, and Captain America walk out, literally past the fence. Military police come up. They're like, Captain America, you're under arrest for trespassing. And she's like, no, I'm Thaddeus Ross's, something advisor, blah, 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 and starts just saying random words that definitely weren't part of the script, and it just was a horrible exchange. But within this is all within 75 seconds, like a minute and a half, they get out of the prison, or the camp. Captain America and Falcon get handcuffed. They start walking for about 20 seconds. Another 20 seconds goes by of the flashing lights going on to some of the military police guys where they're starting to get hypnotized.
Right, because so there's a part of the way that the mind control works in this movie is they're just kind of like how Bucky is, right? They're triggered by a certain song and by flashing lights.
But it's a song that plays and then light signals that hit your retinas or whatever. That happens. Military police guys start to go crazy. Ruth sees, but as they're about to start shooting at them, the Falcon and Captain America are now somehow out of handcuffs. They're not just casual handcuffs. They're in chonky ones. The ones that I'd use. Just kidding. But they're chonky ones, and they're somehow out of them. Falcon's already in the car. Ruth is turning on the car. Captain America's holding his shield next to the car. And then the next scene, they're getting shot at. And then it pans back to them, and the Hummer's already halfway down the dirt road.
Yeah.
My brain was like... I could have blinked and missed the entire scene, literally.
And not only that, but that entire sequence,
and that was all within a minute and a half.
It has nothing. It doesn't serve any purpose at all because you gave them an obstacle. You gave your characters an obstacle, but they overcame it in 5 seconds. It doesn't serve any purpose.
No,
nobody grew. Nobody had to make some big decision.
Yeah,
it's just obstacle, overcome obstacle. And again, I'm not saying that it's like Marvel movies had these incredible screenplays that were just Oscar-worthy.
There have been some.
They told good, compelling stories that actually were written by capable writers. This, I don't even know if it's that the writers were incapable, but as much as it was that they were just... Probably. It was a Frankenstein's monster of a movie. It was 3 movies that was shot, and then you had to stitch together those 3 movies.
One thing that I have learned, for any viewers that are listening... even though I've seen the movies and I know them, but going back and rewatching Civil War, Captain America, or Falcon Winter Soldier, and The Incredible Hulk, at least shedded a little bit of light on what was going on. The reason why I say that is because they couldn't decide which one of those 3 movies it was a sequel to. So if you saw all 3, then you at least understood this a little bit more. We know Marvel, so we were like, why are they doing this path? For people that aren't, that's a smart way. But that's still a huge con, is they couldn't make up their mind on, let's grow off of Hulk's story. Let's grow off of Captain America now filling into Steve Rogers' shoes. It's a Thaddeus Ross story.
And in our last segment when we talk about what we would change, I'm gonna go along that path. Mm-hmm. But another con I'm gonna give this movie is the score. I think the score was the worst Marvel score that we've had so far.
I think we're just big music people. I mean, we talk about it a lot, but a score really does change it.
It does. It 100% changes a movie.
I know for a fact that if Interstellar didn't have Hans Zimmer doing the score, I'd be like, this was still a good movie, but it didn't sit well with me.
It's what makes a movie is like it's the ability to shoot something beautifully cinematographic with a on a canvas.
I also love how Hans will go in and he'll write a lot of the music before the plot, and then Christopher will be like, we're going to base a scene off of this
music is a huge thing, right? And especially a theme song. Okay, imagine the Avengers without the Avengers theme song.
Did you remember seeing one?
Imagine Indiana Jones.
I didn't.
Without the Indiana Jones theme song. Imagine Star Wars without the theme song. Theme songs are huge in movies because they play a huge role in nostalgia. Mm-hmm. And this movie didn't have one. This movie had a terrible soundtrack, especially you go back and you re-watch the first Captain America as well as the Winter Soldier. Both those movies had great soundtracks because they fit perfectly into the movies that they were written for.
Winter Soldier soundtrack was so beautiful.
The first Avenger had a great Captain America theme. The Winter Soldier didn't reuse it because it was brought into the modern world. It was a very different story that needed a different soundtrack, and it worked well. It had a great soundtrack. This movie doesn't have one. It's just there's nothing memorable about it.
On that, and we mentioned they used too much modern music. They didn't use. I know it sounds weird to say, but they didn't use soundtracks that they made. They just were like, "Oh, this is a cool song. Let's put this in the movie." And I get that sometimes you do because there's that modern aspect of Tony Stark listening to rock, so then you play a more modern rock song. But this just had random songs.
It's just different though, because Tony Stark's personality and Sam Wilson's personality are not the same.
Well, I understand that clearly. One is astronomically.
But that's how music works in movies. Is you have to adapt your music to your character, and there was no music to adapt to the character in this movie. I don't even know. I don't know why they didn't. First off, I don't know why they didn't bring back Henry Jackman to score this movie because he was the one who did Civil War, The Winter Soldier, and Falcon and Winter Soldier. Mm-hmm. So I don't know why you didn't bring him back. That's the first problem. And I don't know why.
He didn't want to.
Maybe he read the script
and he's like, I'm out.
I'm out of this. Get me out of here.
That would be a smart man right there.
That's the first problem. I don't know why they didn't bring him back if they could have. And the second problem is why don't you bring back his themes at least, right? Because Falcon had a very good theme song in The Winter Soldier. Mm-hmm. I don't know that many people would know it off the top of their head, but it would be cool
if they heard it and
then they did a little revamp. You would recognize it and be like, okay, yeah, that's the Falcon theme song.
Yeah. Or they changed it a little bit to make it a little bit more
because they reused those themes in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and that helped me feel like it was more connected to the Captain America franchise.
I get that.
And
that would have been cool.
The soundtrack to me was horrible. It was terrible. Mm-hmm. Now, my last, I guess, give me another con before I go into kind of my last con.
My really last one, just because we have so many, but the fight scene between Red Hulk, and Captain America was 2 minutes on screen, and this was supposed to be what the whole movie was leading up to. Right. And the thing that pissed me off the most was I thought it was cool that Hulk just manhandled Captain America or the Falcon, because we all know that Red Hulk would just obliterate him, which I thought was really cool. But the thing that I hated was it ended with Captain America just standing there, just trying to give some powerful speech, and then Hulk just is like, "Oh no!"
It was basically just the equivalent of the Black Widow, the sun's getting real low type of thing, except it wasn't as gay, I mean, it's basically the same thing.
It really was. It was literally him being like, "You need to snap out of it. You're supposed to be a leader." And then all of a sudden, you just see the shadow of.
I'm starting to see a pattern with Sam Wilson's characters. I don't know if it's his character or his writing, but he's very preachy. He's very
wants to be.
He wants to be very preachy. He's very preachy in in Falcon and Winter Soldier. He's kind of preachy in this movie. Not as bad, so I won't fault this movie for having the extreme preachiness on racism and free stuff that
I thought
Falcon
the very
and Winter
end
Soldier had, but
of Falcon and Winter Soldier, his like speech of him just grilling and getting into it.
I hated that.
Yeah,
I hated that so much. It was so preachy. But you know what?
Whatever.
When we review Falcon and Winter Soldier again in 10 years, we'll talk about that again.
10 years, kill me.
But my last con before I get into that, just one thing I want to say on that final scene, that final action scene is there's
CGI?
Yes, there's a shot. There's a shot in that scene.
Sam is standing there. He's just like this.
And the background is like, wow, did you just do that? Was that like $100? You had $100 in your budget. You threw him in front of a green screen on some random student film set. And
the colors were so muted out. I laughed so bad.
It was so bad. It was.
Oh my gosh.
It was. I don't know. I mean, for those of you who have seen Black Widow, there's one particular shot I'm thinking of Black Widow where Yelena gets blown off the carrier, and it's the exact same level of shot quality.
It's so bad.
It is so bad.
Anyway,
now my final con.
Yeah, that was awful to watch in this movie. Just sitting there being like, great, they're doing the Black Widow approach.
Yeah, final con. The final con is, as I mentioned it before, this isn't a Captain America movie. It's not. It's an Incredible Hulk sequel because the movie focuses around Samuel Stearns getting his revenge on Thaddeus Ross. Captain America is a side character.
He's just there. He is in the movie.
Nothing would change if you replaced him with any other Marvel character. Nope. And that's a big problem because
they could have taken Captain America out and just done a Falcon movie, and it's just Joaquin's story, and it would have been the exact same.
Exactly, because you go and you rewatch the 3 Captain America movies. Those movies were focused on Captain America because they were his movies. Right? The first movie is about him becoming that hero through taking the super soldier serum.
Civil War is the only one that I'm a little.
Well, even Civil War, they brought in all the other Avengers, but it was still focused on Captain America in the sense
Bucky.
that the story
was Bucky, I think.
Right, the story was about that relationship being fractured between Iron Man and Bucky. They're like Steve Rogers
because
in the center
Bucky's
of that. Yeah. So
decisions,
ultimately, the movie still is centered on that story, and it still follows Steve Rogers holding to his principles, and as far as like the Civil War plotline goes, but also is just standing up for his best friend because he knows kind of the conflict that's going on there. So, and then Winter Soldier obviously is still focused on Captain America because it's all about his best friend being this, assassin who's been. But in this one, Hydra.
there was no development of Captain America turning into this symbol.
Well, not only that, but there was no reason why you needed to bring Thaddeus Ross and Samuel Stearns into this story. I mean, I guess in the sense that you didn't need to bring them into a Captain America movie, but this was their story. Captain America had no place in this story. Mm-hmm. It's very similar to like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. That movie was a Wanda story. It wasn't a Doctor Strange movie.
And that was better than this, though. I'll tell you that.
I don't like either of them, so I'm just gonna.
Really, I'd rather watch that than this again.
Can we watch something else, please? Is that an option? Can I get an option C?
You get one chicken.
Now, all of that said, let's give our audience our final ratings on this movie. But now, before we do that, we got to remind you of
our scale,
where we stand on our scale. So here we have my scale. This is the Marvel version, right? Because we have different versions.
I disagree with this one.
Now,
only by a
my
few
one
points.
Star is Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I hated that movie.
I only disagree by like 2 points.
And I don't even know. I've only seen it once, and I don't want to see it again. But
maybe I'll make you watch that.
And I think the biggest problem I had with that movie is the fact that they did King so dirty in that movie.
King is supposed to be.
He was
the
supposed
conqueror.
to be he was supposed to be the big bad of the.
I understand that they had to bring King out because of all of the literal controversy of him.
Well, yeah, I get that, but
in the movie,
in this movie, it's like, bro, he got taken down by ants. It's like, are you serious?
Yeah, I know.
As a 5-star, I have Thor: The Dark World. Not a terrible movie, just not a great movie, not a memorable movie. Not one I would choose to watch.
It's one of the few movies from Phase 1 and 2 that you kind of just watched and then you're like,
I mean, it's there. If you're doing a rewatch of the Marvel Universe, you'll watch it, but you're never going to choose to watch that movie.
Yeah.
Now, as a 9.5, which this fluctuates between a 9.5 and a 10, depending on how I'm feeling.
Which is crazy. But
Captain America: The Winter Soldier is an incredible movie. It is.
It's so well done.
In my personal opinion, it's the best movie in the Marvel Universe.
I disagree with you on that, but I'll show you why in a second. But that's also because we've had our differences on who your kind of main character that you like is and mine. Yeah. And that reflects on our movie choices.
That's what we're working with on my scale. Now, Evan, tell us about your scale.
Speaking of, man, I hated Eternals. I'm so glad that I went and saw it by myself because I went home and contemplated life, and it was truly a tough watch.
That's what I did after watching Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I had to watch
it twice because you hadn't seen it.
I had to go to therapy after that because I was like,
yeah, you hadn't seen it, and
I have to recover. I can't do this anymore. I don't know what movies are or why.
Yeah, I'm going to turn into an alcoholic at this point. But if I have to keep watching 1-star movies like this,
movies have that effect sometimes.
So that's my 1-star. Eternals was awful. Thor: The Dark World, we both tied on because I can't really think. For me, Marvel, I usually enjoy them for the comic book aspect. So most of the Marvel movies I've seen are above that 60 percentile. Thor: The Dark World was one of the only ones that I was like, it's there.
It's there.
And then, of course, my 10 is the original Iron Man. And I think that reflects in our characters. I love Iron Man's character and his development.
And I love Captain America.
Exactly. So that's why you've scored Winter Soldier the highest, and I have Iron Man.
Honestly, today I would probably put Winter Soldier as a 10. But when I made this graph, it wasn't.
But also at the same time, Winter Soldier is still a great movie. Yeah. And I know that you still think Iron Man is still a great movie, too.
Yeah, I do like Iron Man a lot.
I just prefer that one over Winter Soldier and then vice versa. So
that said, that's what we're working with. So let's talk about our final ratings. For me, this shouldn't come as...
We were so generous.
Based on everything that has been said today, it shouldn't come as any surprise. I gave this movie a 3.5 stars. I think that's pretty generous considering everything that we had to sit through for 2 hours. For an hour and 58 minutes, to be exact.
I remember when the movie was done and it played the credits, I looked at my watch and was like, oh my gosh, we still have so much time of our day. Because this movie flew by. It was awful.
It was kind of both. It flew by in the sense that it was short, but it also dragged in certain parts.
100%.
Evan, tell us about your rating.
I gave it a 3.8, number one, because I'm trying to guess a little bit different than you without knowing your score yet, because I want to be different. Because that's what I'm about. No.
Oh, my gosh. Shut up.
Honestly, I tried to give a little bit of the benefit of the doubt of them having to go through reshoots. They were really bad, but I really enjoyed Anthony Mackie.
You can solve that problem just by not making a crappy script in the first place.
That's
sure, you're going to have reshoots on every movie. It will. That's just the nature of making a movie. But
I think I gave it a little bit of a better score because of the cameo with Bucky. It does give me hope that this movie and Thunderbolts are very connected in a timeline aspect, that gives me hope that they're going to just continue down this route. So I gave it a little bit higher because I'm hoping that's how
Evan's
the approach
in this popcorn.
That's about right. That was what we were doing to that one lady on Amazon.
Oh my gosh.
That was a problem. Anyway.
If she ever watches this video, I want her to know how much I despise her.
I hope she sees this.
I hope she's I hope she's a happy person and she has a good life, but never go to the movie theater ever again. Stay away, please.
I wish I could rate her as a 1-star.
Wow.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Maybe we should do that. Develop an app where you rate other people. I would get icky real quick.
That's how we get canceled.
Now, what do audiences say about this movie? Well, as of...
Yeah, this was surprising. Oh, my gosh.
As of recent, their IMDb and the Rotten Tomatoes scores kind of don't reflect as much as we think, but they do give a good reflection. IMDb has it as a solid 5.9.
What?
At least as of recording this today.
That's awful.
Rotten Tomatoes, on the other hand, has it as a solid 50%.
That's a bit more
understandable. Which I think is one of the only Marvel Cinematic Universe movies that is a rotten score.
Next to Quantumania.
And
the Marvels
and Eternals also has a
I think so.
I think maybe the Dark World, Thor: The Dark World does too.
I think it did, but I think it was closer to that 60% where it wasn't as bad as this.
Yeah, but this doesn't get that benefit because it doesn't deserve it. It's just not a great movie.
It wasn't.
It really isn't.
Anybody that thinks that this movie's above a 6 out of 10 or a 60% or a 4
They're
out of 5,
insane.
whatever, I genuinely want to sit down and ask how.
No, for real. For real, because
you could just love Captain America and love Anthony Mackie to death, and it's just still a poor movie.
It isn't. Yeah, nobody in their right mind would choose to watch this movie over any of the other Captain America movies. You just wouldn't. Now,
imagine somebody wants to watch this over Winter Soldier.
then they're insane.
That hurts my soul.
I would cut off all communication with that person.
That's right.
Now, in closing, let's talk about one thing: what we would change.
Other than everything?
Other than everything, what is something or a couple things that you would change to make this a well-watchable movie?
Honestly, if Stern wasn't in the movie, I would be a lot more happy because then it would give me the reason of this is more focused around Thaddeus Ross trying to rebuild the Avengers.
Which would have been an all right
I would have been okay with that. And honestly, maybe the score would have been higher, personally.
Who knows?
But if Stern wasn't in it, because Stern had absolutely no benefit to the story, and there was still Sidewinder or somebody else or something, even if we still didn't know who was pulling the strings, I would have been okay with that. And somehow Thaddeus Ross still turns into Hulk. I would have been okay with that at least because Stern did nothing to this movie. But also, I think that they should not have done the trailers that they did. The trailers gave us the entire movie.
Yeah,
I swear
they did.
God. They gave us everything that we needed to know. The first trailer was great. When we saw it, I was like, oh, cool. We get Red Hulk?
I was like,
Well, I was just interested. I was like, oh, I wonder how they're going to incorporate that. And then the next one, we saw literally Harrison Ford like transform into Red Hulk, and I was like, great. They did
spoil that, but that's just a marketing thing. They're just trying to get more butts in seats. So now there's a couple things I would change about this movie.
There's a lot.
So okay, let's play on this idea that we're in this alternate universe. I'm sitting there in Marvel Studios headquarters. I'm sitting there with Kevin Feige. And I'm like, hey, Kevbot, I'm going to tell you how we're going to do Captain America 4. And now this is pre-Falcon and Winter Soldier, okay? So we're sitting here right after Avengers Endgame. Kevin comes to me. He's like, Sheldon, I need a Captain America 4. What are you going to do about it? Here's what I would do. And no, given that we still have to maintain some of the plot narratives that this movie had, what I would do, like you said, I would get rid of Samuel Stearns, get him out of here. I don't care about him. Nope. Nobody really cares about him. He hasn't been here since the Incredible Hulk. Don't care. Get him out of here.
Yeah.
What I would have done is turn Falcon and Winter Soldier, that, as I talked about in my review of that, I would turn that
it into more of a movie.
Into a Captain America 4 movie. And then I would have replaced that annoying little British girl that is...
For Giancarlo
Esposito. Because... he is a great actor. I loved him in The Maze Runner.
Something about his voice, man.
I know. It's
like, soothing but intimidating.
It is. You know, it's like when you know those suit jackets that are velvet, that are like red velvet. It's kind of like if his voice had a suit.
Would you wear one of those?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay.
But it's like it's kind of soothing, kind of comforting. It's like kind of, I don't know. That's kind of what his voice is like. It's like you said, it's soothing, but it's also kind of intimidating.
It's got flair.
But he's a great actor.
He really is.
And imagine him. Okay, imagine this. Picture me this. Imagine you had the general storyline of Falcon and Winter Soldier, right? Where Sam gives up the shield.
But he's the leader of the Flag Smashers.
Yeah, he's the leader of the Flag Smashers, and it's Thaddeus Ross as president, Harrison Ford, who's the one who reinstates John Walker as Captain America. So now there's this conflict between Sam Wilson and Thaddeus Ross and the new Captain America as the side plot, while the main plot is them trying to figure out what's going on with the Flag Smashers, with Giancarlo Esposito as the leader of that.
I feel like that would have done better. Like
I think it would have been
the plot line of it would be better. It might not be like a 7 or an 8, but I feel like that would be a lot better.
I think it would have been a great movie. Well, I think it would have been a great movie if you had it in the hands of a capable director. Because neither the director of Falcon and Winter Soldier or this seemed
knew what
capable.
they were doing.
They didn't. They seemed like amateurs. But imagine you give a story like that to the Russo brothers. Okay? That would be a great Captain America
The Russo
sequel.
brothers do know how Marvel works. So
yeah,
they
do,
made
which
sure
is why they've
made
made the 4 best Marvel movies, or 4 of the best Marvel movies.
Yeah.
And imagine you do that. Also, get rid of the chick.
Yeah,
get rid of the 4'11" chick. I don't care about her. I don't want her in the
I hate
movie.
to say it, but she just knew somebody at Hollywood. She just did.
For sure.
And that's why she was there. There's no way around it. She wasn't a good actress.
But just that's what I would change. That's how I'd make the story better. I think it would be cool. I think it'd be worth it. I think
clearly the easy answer would be to change literally everything, but I feel like that would be a really good adaptation of how things could or should have gone. I think that would have been great.
I agree.
I totally agree.
Let us know in the comments what you think of Captain America Brave New World. If you've seen it or if you haven't seen it, let us know if you're going to see it. Because, like I said, we want to keep the theater industry alive. This is not a movie that I would recommend to keep the theater industry alive with, but we want to keep it alive anyways. So,
because it's fun to just go see it.
If you want to go see it,
is.
Go see it. Do the theater industry a favor and try and keep it alive.
Yes.
With that said, this has been Spoiler Alert, and we'll see you next time.